Welcome! I'm Jem Hawkes and I'm here for Jessie James Beads this evening. It's 9 o'clock here in Blighty and I believe it's 4 PM Eastern Standard. I hope you've had a beautiful day today. So it is my absolute pleasure to be with you again here on the Jessie James Beads Facebook page. I hope that whatever it is you've been doing today, it's been an absolutely blissful day for you. So I want to give you a sneaky preview of what we're going to be sharing and making tonight. So I'm just going to drop you down very quickly here. So I'm going to be working with these absolutely gorgeous, and I can't tell you how much I've fallen in love with these Tensha Beads. And this is called the Go Your Own Way Pendant, or a variation thereof. You can call it whatever you fancy, to be quite honest, that's absolutely fine. So the reasoning behind the name is that there are multitudes of different ways that you can customise this pendant. It is one of my absolute best sellers over the years, and I think part of that is because it can be just so very different. Every time you make it, you can make it slightly differently. Good afternoon, Sherry, and hi to Maria. I hope that you are both well this afternoon. It's this evening here. If I catch myself out saying the wrong time of day, many apologies. I'm sure it's the middle of the morning somewhere around the world. It gets very confusing for me. So, as I say, I hope you've had a lovely day. Just a very brief word about what we're going to be working with tonight. I have chosen to work with 3 different Tensha beads, and what I'm going to do is pop you back down to the board for a second so that you can have a closer look at them. So I've popped 3 into a design, and what I'm going to show you is this basic design to begin with, and you can see why it's got Swirl in the title there. And you can use as many or as few of the beads as you wish to. I absolutely have fallen so hard in love with these. They're truly gorgeous. We're also going to be working with just a single gauge of wire this evening. So that's what we're looking to create, something similar to this, and that's what we're going to be working with, along with around about your 15 inches of that 18 gauge wire. This is round wire, and I'm working in a silver coloured copper wire. So, as I say, I hope you've had a beautiful day today. Let's pop back up and see my face for a moment. So what have you been up to today? Where have you been? What have you done? What do you know? What's the gossip? Tell me everything about your day today, just while we wait for everybody to gather in and draw up a drink. I have got my very responsible water on the go this evening. This afternoon you could be having an afternoon tea. I don't know. What have you been up to today? So let's have a quick gander and see who's joining us. We've got Sherry, we've got Maria. Hello, Danielle is here, my darling. Good to see you. Jackie is in. Wonderful. Love the wire wrap dragon pendant you have on, Jem. Thank you so much, sweetheart. That should be coming out over the weekend. With a good wind behind me, I'm hoping to record a tutorial for that on Saturday, perhaps to be released on Sunday. But if not, it will be coming soon. Gracie says, hello, love your necklace. That's really kind of you. Thank you so much. What size are the round beads you are using? Let's have a gander very quickly. I have a professional measuring device. They look to be 10, 12 mil, something like that. Oh no, I'm rubbish at this. 14 millimetres and a 16 millimetre. Now that would be just over ½ an inch. This rule is completely in metric, I'm afraid, so I'm not able to give you the imperial variation of that, I'm afraid. So 14 and 16 millimetres. Hi Jem, hello Rosanna, how are you, sweetheart? I hope you're having a beautiful day today. Oh, Jan is having a bit of a fight. Well, we will be sending you giant, great big healing squeezy hugs, unless that's too painful. In that case, they'll be very gentle hugs. So all the very best. Me, myself, I am just fighting a very normal little cough and a cold. So if I'm a bit wheezy this evening, I'm very sorry. Sherry is sending quick recovery thoughts your way. All the very best, sweetheart. And lots of love, obviously. Yes, you have been answered indeed by Danielle. I believe those are 14 or 16 mil Tensha. They certainly are. 14 millimetre and 16 millimetre. So that is just over the ½ inch size. I'm not 100% sure what that is in imperial. Never was terribly good at translating those. So the wire that we're going to use this evening is round wire. It's very, very easy to get hold of all over the place. If you're making with a slightly harder temper wire, it's not a problem. It's a really versatile design, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to share it with you this evening, is that it's achievable for most people to work with more basic tools. And also it doesn't really matter if you're working with a slightly softer wire, because we'll just make it do what we want it to do. So Mariho, I want to say, oh no, hope it's not too bad. Well, fingers crossed that there's recovery going on for Jan. Rosanna says, been working on my triangle weave from summer camp and decided it's not necessarily my thing. Rosanna, I struggle with seed beads. My manual dexterity and close vision are more suited to wire work. Let's just go with that. Sharon has joined us. Hello Sharon, lovely to have your company. Well, it's brilliant to see so many of you joining us, and what we will do in just a moment is take a look at some of the tools that we'll be using. So very, very briefly, let's pop down to the overhead for just a second. This evening I'm going to be using some cutters. These are my flush cutters, I've had them forever. Bent chain nose pliers. You could equally just use chain nose or flat pliers, that's not a problem. I'm also going to be using some round nose pliers. If you have them, it's always really handy to grab a hold of your bail makers, because you can make some really nice swooshy styles with these. And also really super handy for actually making bails as well as little linking sections. If you want to get into rosary linking, these are absolutely wonderful to have as well. So let me pop those back out of the way. I think we are pretty much ready to get going for this evening. Let's have a look. Tricky technique, glad to hear you're giving it a try. Yes, Danielle, let's all encourage you to give it a go. It's something that I struggle with, I'm going to be honest. Rosanna is sending best wishes to Jan also. Oh my gosh, you had it back in February. The exhaustion was the worst. I can understand, and I send you all my warmest love and wishes. Shall we pop down to the board and get cracking with this evening's or this afternoon's design? Gosh, I bet somewhere it's the middle of the day. Let's pop down to the overhead and have another look at our design. So what I'm going to show you first of all is how to create this section. We have a little interloper. Let me just whoosh him away gently. Off you pop, Mr. Fly. There we go. So we're going to be making this piece. One of the reasons I love this design, and one of the reasons it sells so very well, is its versatility. If you can master this swooshy design, you've got two loops at either end, and I'm covering those loops with these swirls, hence part of the name. Now if you want to, you can curve it gently and add chain, and you've got a really beautiful feature piece for a bangle or a pendant. You can hang that down as a pendant, you can make it into earrings. It's hugely versatile, so it's a really cool technique to learn, and it's actually not that difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use all three Tensha beads. I'm going to use 2 for the main section, and I'll recreate the design that we're looking at here. So I'm going to pop the opaque bead out of the way for the moment. I've just popped these to one side so that I hopefully don't knock them on the floor. Let me just pop this over to one side. So the length of wire that I'm working with is around 15 inches, and again this is your silver colour 18 gauge. Those beads are absolutely stunning. Rosanna says, I'm much happier doing wire work as well, Jem. I'd much rather make a circlet than this triangle weave. Oh my gosh, my life is, as well as dragons, I do love circlets and crowns. I will have to show you at some point, Rosanna. Drop me a message and we'll share circlet design ideas, I think. So with my 15 inches of wire, what we're going to do is come down about 1/3 of the way and put a little bit of a right angle bend in here. So I'm just going to pop a right angle bend, and as I say, that's around about 1/3 of the way down the wire. It doesn't have to be exactly correct, it doesn't have to be exactly precise, it's not an issue. You'll actually see if you look closely I've come down a little bit further. It doesn't really matter, one way or the other we're going to make something a little bit similar to this. So what I'm going to do now is come in with my round nose pliers, take that right angle bend and make it into a small loop at the base. Now the reason I make a loop here is that it gives you a really nice secure base for your design. So I've just used my round nose pliers to create a circular form, which I'm going to support with my pliers like so, and I'm just going to give that a few squashes and squeezes to make sure that that circular form is indeed set in the wire. Rosanna says, I've recently finished a circlet with a dragon and moons on the forehead. Oh my gosh, I'd love to see that. Absolutely would love to see that. Fabulous. So I'm going to support the circle that we've just made. What I need to do now is just tilt the wire up ever so slightly and draw the long tail all the way around. And I think I'm going to do that twice. Whoop! There you go. I've actually sent a bead to the floor. That is just about standard for me. I'll have to retrieve that in just a moment. You can tell that we're live. So what we have here is an upright. Got a lovely upright here, and we've got some wire coming over to the side. I am just going to find that bead before I roll over it with my chair. If I can't, we'll have to improvise and use a different bead. No, we've got it. Happy days. Let me just pop those in a pot instead. There we go. So I'm going to put the first of my beads onto the shorter segment of wire. So if I bring that down and just slide it down onto the central core wire. Now ideally this needs to be straightened, and it does help if you just give that a little bit of a warm, because your wire will just appreciate you a little bit more if you add some heat to it. So what we're going to do now is flip the design over on its side. So if I flip this one over as well, you should be able to see. Let me just check that's in camera. Yes, it is. So you should be able to see that we're just at the base here. And what I'm going to do is use my thumb to generate some heat in the tail of wire that is longer, that's coming away from the side. Put a little bit of warmth into that and draw it over the top of that core wire like so. I'm going to be very, very careful and protective of my Tensha beads because they are very, very beautiful. And I'm just going to draw that wire around until I get a nice shape, just sliding around the side. Now you can bring this closer, you can have it slightly further away. That is indeed one of the beauties of this design. It's endlessly customizable. So forgive the noise of the wire on the table. What I'm going to do is just squeeze that slightly in, remove the dog hair that's attached itself. Sorry about that. That again is also quite classic for my house. So we've got that first little swoosh going on all the way over the top of the core wire. Anne is in and says, hi from California, it's 1 PM, lovely dragon necklace, would love to see a tutorial for the dragon pendant. Hopefully coming up on Sunday, fingers crossed. Rosanna, if beads don't hit the floor at some point, then you are much less butterfingery than I am. No, I'm 100% butterfingery, love. Absolutely 100% with you there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bent chain nose pliers onto the swooshy section of wire that's come over the top. I'm going to grip hold of that really firmly. Now I don't particularly mind having small tool marks in my wire. If you do, just hold firmly but don't crush with the plier tips. And I'm going to take the tail of the wire all the way around that central core. If I tip that up slightly, you should be able to see it's encircling. Now as I draw this tail over the top and around again, what can happen is that this little horseshoe shape will shrink down, and that's one of the reasons I kind of like to leave a slightly larger gap in between the bead and the swoosh. So I'll show you that happening now. I'm just going to draw that tail over the top. I'm going to do it by hand because I want to take care of my beads, and you may notice that that's ever so slightly smaller now, and that's just because it's easier for the wire to bend around in that fashion. If you don't want that to happen, I'm going to show you a quick tip now. What you would do is you'd hold on to the half moon or horseshoe shape and support with your pliers underneath whilst taking that tail all the way around for a second time. If you grip in this fashion, you'll stop that shape from changing at all. So we've got 2 wraps down at the bottom by that lower loop. We've got 2 wraps on the central core. So I'm going to introduce my next bead, which, if we're recreating the design just here, will be the white with the beautiful floral transfer. Now it may be that there's a way up for these, it may be that they are beautiful either way. I'm just going to slide that on. If you have any questions, please do. drop them into the comments. If I missed anything, I will pick it up at the end. We are using 18 gauge wire. It's round. I prefer to work in round wire because it is more easily available for most people. Certainly in the UK we struggle to get profiled wire. It's 18 gauge silver colour round wire. This design will work in a harder temper as well as a softer temper wire, so it's all good. Danielle has just confirmed that the Tensha beads have a lovely protective coating that helps protect them from scratching, which is super cool when you're working with wire. It really does pay to take that little extra precaution, so I'm grateful that that's something that has occurred. My grandmother used to make decoupage, and that final layer of varnish was the one that sealed the deal. So, oh, and thank you very much for the recovery, much appreciated for those wishes. So I'm going to repeat exactly the same as we did for the base bead. I'm going to apply some warmth to the wire just here with the lighter coloured bead, and then I'll get on to why I haven't put a loop on here just yet, because what it will do, having a loop here will stop your beads from escaping during the process, but also it will stop you from changing that length. So sometimes I get part way through the design and I think, actually, I'd like to have 5 wraps in the middle and make a big gap. But if you've already put your wrapped loop at the top, which becomes your bail, you can no longer change. So just bearing in mind that your bead can escape until you add this next wrap on. So let's get that second section in. The Tensha beads are absolutely stunning. I am in love. So again, applying just a little bit of heat and then creating a nice horseshoe or half moon shape to draw that over the top. And what I've done is I've come from underneath to the top of the core wire. So if I show you that on the end, it's underneath the core wire, swishes round, encircles twice, so therefore the wire is coming out from underneath again. So you get a really nice sultry flow to the design. So what I'm going to do now again is I'm going to flip the design upside down for the moment. I'm going to hold on to the curved section of wire and draw this tail all the way around. So sorry about the scratches. What the balance here is to not boof the camera with the wire or the tools. Oh, bless you, Catherine, thank you. So I'm going to take that tail again around for a second time. If you find that your half moon or horseshoe shape is shrinking, you can add a little bit of strength to that coil that occurs around the core, and then hold on to the curved section with your pliers, which is why I love having bent chain nose pliers, and take that wire all the way around the back for a second time. And if I just spin this around carefully, hopefully we're still in shot, I'm just going to tighten that coil up so it's super neat and tidy, and you can see that we've recreated a double coil, and a double coil here. Just make sure I'm still in shot. Yes, we are. That is super handy. So when we get up to the top and we've got our section of wire hanging out on the same side as these half moon shapes, now is the time that I can turn a wrapped loop at the top to create the, whoops-a-daisy, it's coming into shot anyway. What we're going to do is to create quite a nice large aperture that you can put any chain or cord or ribbon through. These, because it reminds me slightly of Japanese gardens, it's super pretty on some floral ribbon. Maybe some sakura blossom coloured ribbon would be really beautiful with something like this. But having a nice big bail aperture is always really handy. So I'm just going to leave this section of wire hanging around to the side. I'm going to grip hold of that core wire. I'm going to turn this ever so slightly so that you can see I'm pushing the straight line at the top forwards. Now I have left enough space for another couple of coils of wire on that core. What you'll also notice is that there are gaps either side of the Tensha beads. This is for 2 reasons. If you make this with beads that are not coated, as these handily are, what you will actually appreciate having some space there, but also Isn't it nice to be able to move your jewellery? Sometimes we just need to be able to have some beads to play with on the move. So I'm going to create a bail form now. If you don't have the bail makers, a pencil is really handy, but I absolutely love and thoroughly endorse my bail making pliers. So I'm going to wrap a circular form up at the top here and take that tail over the back and all the way around like so. If I flip that down sideways and back closer to the desk, you'll be able to see that's a nice large form we've created. I'm just going to check in to see if you have any questions, any ideas on how to start a circlet. My goodness, yes, we will get on to that. I think Rosanna and myself might put our heads together for you on that one. So once I've created that nice round form, I'm going to grip hold of the circle shape that I've created, and I've got a long tail of wire coming forward, so I'm going to wrap that around twice. So at the top we're actually going to have the appearance of 4 wraps, and that's absolutely fine. We've got loads of wire left at the top. What I will do is just trim away the end there and pop the tail in the scrap pot so that that's nice and neat and tidy. I'm just going to draw the section that's up at the top, which we use for creating the bail. I'm just going to draw that up and out of the way for a second. What I will use that for is to create a nice coiled form at the top which covers the bail, and it also means that you can wear the piece upside down if you particularly want to. Whilst I have in this instance got the bail in this orientation, so you can put a chain through, and the loop at the bottom is sideways so that I can add another dropper to it later if I wish to. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm just going to tidy up all of my circular forms. I'm going to apply just a little bit of strengthening in the centre here by squishing those coils very, very gently. Later on I'll add a coil at the top here, but what I want to do now is draw the longest tail of wire. It came up, around twice, and now we're going to take it back down again. And this is why this is endlessly customizable. You could flip this over to the other side and create almost like an 8 shape for your design, but what I'm going to do is recreate the piece that we have on the board with us today. So a little bit of heat in that wire, like so, drawing that down in another beautiful swooshing feature. Now you can make these perfectly symmetrical, you can make them line up beautifully, but I actually quite like it when they're a little bit organic and they don't necessarily chase the inside shape. So what I would do now is I would pinch those 2 swooshes over here on the left of the top bead, take the tail all the way around to the back, and what we're going to do is try to nestle that in between the 2 wraps where we started off. And then I'm going to wrap around for a second time, like so, and draw that back again. So it's the same process as we did the first time. I'm just going to tighten this up ever so slightly, being respectful of your beads always, and then we can repeat that process for a second time. Now we worked with around about 15 inches of wire, and that has left us with enough to encircle these 2 beads. We've got lots of wire up at the top to create a large coil, but down at the bottom we're going to have quite a dinky coil. So you could up the length of your wire if you wanted an expressly sizable coil like we have on this piece. But I'm going to take that tail all the way around down at the bottom, just above the loop where we started the whole project, all the way across for a second time, and then pop back in with those round nose pliers. So if I tilt that up slightly, hopefully you'll still be able to see in focus. We'll take that over the top and just draw that around. So we've got a very diminutive little coil on the bottom of this one. And I think that is probably because I left too much space at the top. All that means is that there'll be a dinky coil rather than a large coil, and at the top there'll be a much larger coil. So again, each time I make this, it's different. One thing that I will do is I will get that bail up at the top straightened up neatly before I start coiling back down. I'm going to give this wire, it's seen some action now, so it's getting just a tiny bit tense. Straighten up the core of my pendant, and I'm going to create a coil. Now, you don't have to create a coil in the orientation that it's going to end up in. So it's easier for me to start the coil coming up and away from the pendant. So if I show you that at an angle now, you can see it's not going to sit nicely if I continue doing that. However, what it does for me is it enables me to get a really good grip on the coil. And what we can do here is tiny quarter turns, little by little, build up a really nice, sizable, very flat, quite neat coil. And the reason I like these is because you can cover the top of your bail. So what I will do is make sure that that bail is sitting centrally, and then by hand push that coil over the face of the bail, and in that way it just kind of looks like your necklace or your ribbon or whatever you've chosen to use for threading material. It's just kind of floating. It's floating on a coil, which I think is kind of cool. So what I will do for you now is just show you how to make this tiny little link section to add an extra bead on. Now you can do this once, you don't have to do it at all, you can have just as it is, like so. But I will show you quickly how to add a further Tensha bead on at the bottom. I have a great big spool of wire here, and I'm going to cut away about 6 inches. I'm going to drop that into position. I just need to make sure that everybody can see what it is I'm doing. So let's pop this up right over here into the corner so I don't whack it on the floor again. If you missed that earlier, I'm sure there'll be another opportunity for me to throw stuff on the floor at a future time. Don't worry, you didn't miss out on much. So again, this is around about 6 inches. I've got silver colour round copper 18 gauge wire. In the UK, that's equivalent to 1mm wire. It's my most used wire. So I'm going to start by creating a coil, and this sits underneath the bead. If you want to link endless beads over and over, start with a large hole, and I'll tell you what, I'll do that for you now. A large hole in the centre of your coil, because it means you have an aperture through which you can add another link. So I've got a perfect circle, well, perfect-ish. I've got a reasonable circle to begin with, and I'm going to start turning that into a coil. And having that large hole in the centre of the coil, it's quite different to how I would normally do my coils. My coils are generally a hide-all, and I'm going to run that probably 3 times around, and I'll show you what I mean when I get there. So I bring that all the way round to the end. I've come around from the start point once, twice, 3 times, and to get a nice right angle coming away, I've put the pliers underneath. I'm going to pinch hold of the tail of wire as it comes away, and I'm going to grip really firmly and draw the coil away. I have found over the years that's the easiest way to get a reasonable right angle coming off a coil. I'm just going to then add a little bit of warmth to make sure that I've got a nice straight segment to work with now. I'm just going to pop over to the chat and see if we have any further questions. Oh, bless you, that's very, very kind. Do you flip the wire in order to get the original look that you have on your pendant? Do you know what? I can't even remember. Yes, so for this one, I came all the way around twice on that second turn so that I could go in the same direction. And on this piece, I would have gone round 1.5 times to get the one side and then other side selection. I can show you that very, very quickly. Here's an alternative as well, just using some amethyst chunks I had lying around, as you do. So you can switch it around endlessly to make it super customizable. So we're going to bring that last translucent Tensha bead down onto the top of that coil we've literally just created. And once I get that into position, I'm going to assess what space I have available. Now, if you decided that you weren't sure whether you were going to make a necklace or a piece for a bracelet, as I say, you can pop this on the back of the wrist as well. If for any reason your loop at the bottom is in 90 degrees to the rest of the pendant, like the loop at the top, my loops at the top are always 90 degrees because I want the threading material to pass through them seamlessly, like so. So you can orient the loop at the bottom where we begin in that same way, and then if you are going to add another bead, you'll just need to assess whether you need a sideways loop at the top or a forwards loop at the top. So for this, we'll need to have a loop that comes forwards. So if I grip hold just above the top of that beautiful Tensha bead, and I push a forwards bend like so. If the loop was through 90 degrees and sideways, you'd have a loop coming sideways. So again, you can use your bail making pliers to create a large loop if you wanted to go through something like this to add yet another bead, but I actually want quite a small loop, so I'm just going to use my round nose pliers. I'm going to drop that into position and then draw the tail around. So you can see there's a huge gap in there at the moment. Now when I'm adding a bead to the base of my designs, I like to see this side rather than this side. Now there's very little in it. It really doesn't matter which way you go. But if you want to see what I would describe as the front, if you have a particular bead that doesn't spin and you want the front, what you'll need to do is flip that upside down, put the long tail through, and I'm only going through the rear loop, slide that in, because when you turn that around, you'll have the front face forwards. So if I pop my original design out of the way, I'm going to grip hold of the loop we made at the top of the single Tensha bead, and I'm gripping here just on the circular section, not at the top and not where the wires cross over. I'm going to take that tail all the way around twice before I take it to the back, pushing that into position. So this is the rear side of my design. It's slightly less pretty. Flip that over, trim away carefully, always police your offcuts, and also make sure that you don't scratch any of your beads. So I'm just going to very carefully, using the curved side, sorry about the ink on my fingers, using the curved side of my bent chain nose pliers against the bead just to push that down into position. So those are the two projects. We made this one that's the same on both sides. Let me just fiddle that until it sits properly. It's being a little bit naughty. And then so on this side, all the way around the core twice, and on this side 1.5 times, so that the wire switches. I can absolutely show you that if you need me to do that. I can do you a quick video and add it to my Facebook page tomorrow. But other than that, that's the basics of it. Let's just pop back up here with you for a second. Hello, I'm back. Sorry about that. So you do have endless possibilities with that design if you give yourself enough wire, and it's always better to have more than you need. So we worked with just 15 inches tonight, which is just enough to set those 2 Tensha beads with 2 swirls on each side. So if you want to be really elaborate, you can keep going up and down until you've got it absolutely filled. And that's why I love this design, because it really is endlessly customizable. You can have the swirls on one side, you can have them on both sides, creating like a figure of 8 or a goddess design. You can have 2 beads, 5 beads, 10 beads, it's entirely up to you. You will obviously need to up the length of your wire if you are going to work with a multiple number of beads, but 15 to 18 inches is plenty for those 2 Tensha beads, and the sizes on those were 14 and 16 millimeters. The wire again is 18 gauge silver plated copper. So let's have another quick look at those, and let's see if you have any questions at all. Thank you very much for your kind comments. The tutorial for the necklace I'm wearing should be coming up this weekend, hopefully, with a good wind. With any luck, it'll be coming out on Sunday. I haven't recorded it yet, but I have been planning it all week, and I've been making very, very, very many. I found out that some people refer the collective noun of dragons as a thunder. If you know an alternative word other than thunder for the collective noun of dragons, I'd love to know it, because my house is full of dragons. Absolutely love it, absolutely love it. But what I do want to say is that the quality of the Tensha beads is astonishing. I've worked in jewellery making for around about 10 years now, with wire for around about 6 or 7 years, and I haven't come across any beads that of this nature, with a transfer on, that have met my exacting standards, and I can't tell you how delighted I am to have these finally. So we'll pop back down to the design, and if there are any other questions, do give me a shout. I can, if you like, show you a quick mock-up of how to switch from this side to that side. I don't have any more Tensha beads, but I do have a couple of random gemstone beads rattling around on my desk. Thank you very much for all your kind comments. Danielle, would you like me to just do a quick demonstration to show how to switch from one side to the other? I'm all out of Tensha beads, but I do have beads always hanging around the place. Jan says, love dragons and love your work. You're very, very kind. Donna is also being very, very kind as well. Much appreciated. So what I will do then is I will just unspool another amount of wire. And I think this time we'll go for slightly longer. We may go for 18 inches. I would like to see it. Cool, cool. Let's do that. Just have to pretend it's Tensha beads then. So if I just pop these over to one side for a second. Those are just two of the options that you can make. Around about 18 inches this time, and this is 18 gauge wire. And right back at the beginning we put a right angle in, but this time I'm definitely going to go for a third of the way along the wire. Yes please, love to see how it's done. All good, let's get cracking. So a third of the way down, so it's around about 6 inches from the end on an 18-inch strand, and again round silver colour copper wire in 18 gauge 1mm. I'm going to add in a little loop at the bottom to begin with, and that's the bit where I always forget what I'm doing. So what we're going to have to do now is just be mindful. I'm working with a very long tail of wire, so it will probably throw some things on the floor. So if Rosanna is still with us, yes, I am a bit of a bumble finger and probably will. So just trying to wrangle that into view. This is the long tail of the wire, taking that all the way around. And sorry if that's come out of vision just for a moment there, it's just that the camera is very close. So I've got my loop, I've created my circle at the bottom there, and what I'm going to do is wrap twice now at the base. Just want to make sure that that's a little bit more upright. You can see I've got a kink in my wire where it's come in on the reel, which I'll address in just a moment. So if I take that tail all the way around underneath, once and then over the top, twice, and bring that coming away to what will be the left of the design. I'm just going to give that a little bit of a neatening up, and then before I get cracking I want to make sure that my wire is nice and straight. In that way I'll be less likely to damage or stress my beads. So I have a matte buff dragon's vein agate on the desk, which I'm going to slide down to the very bottom of the design. So if I then, again, I'm adding some heat to the design like so. Using my thumb, it's the shape of my thumb and the heat of my body. The wire has come from underneath. It's coming around the edge of the gemstone or the Tensha bead. We're pretending this is a Tensha bead. And I'm going to draw that over the top of the core wire in a nice half moon or horseshoe shape. If it doesn't go quite to plan, you can manually adjust that with your pliers if you need to. If you've warmed your wire first, it will be quite happy to accept that little modification. Rosanna says, that's alright, I dump beads on the floor constantly. The real problem comes when you need that bead and cannot find where it rolled to. 100% every day of my life. So, what we're going to do is check that we're happy with the half moon shape that we've created. The wire has come underneath to over the top. I'm going to pinch this really firmly and draw that once and a half times. So rather than wrapping all the way around, like we did the first time around, let me just give that a squish. Draw that back into position so that you can see it in the upright position. We're then going to add our second bead. Let's have a look and see what I've got. Instead of a matte buff, I have got a dyed ringed agate. So if I drop that down into position now, that would sit above my first bead. So instead of going twice around the core, I've gone 1.5 times. So I just want to make sure that that's nice and neat and tidy. Again, being respectful of my beads, giving that a gentle squish, heating that wire up, and then drawing it from the top this time to underneath, like so. Hopefully that's all still in vision. Joined late, what gauge wire? We're using 18 gauge. It's round silver colour copper, and I'm currently working with approximately 18 inches. 15 inches doesn't leave you much for looping. 18 inches will give you more than plenty. So the wire has come from over the top, swooshed around in a horseshoe shape to underneath. I'm going to pinch that firmly and draw the tail of the wire all the way over. Now this time we're going to go back the way we came, so it's a double wrap at the top. Now I showed you in the first tutorial how to create that round wrapped loop at the top and to create the coil, so we won't repeat that, but I am going to just straighten out that wire. Now because you're putting a lot of pressure on the wire that circles the core, you will find it gets a little bit tense, so you will need to just give it a little bit of a gentle massage to get it back to going. So a nice smoothening. If there are any kinks, you can gently just straighten those out before continuing on your way. So I'm going to take the wire to follow the course of the design as it came up, so in an S shape, rather than in a 3 or a capital E shape. So again, applying a little bit of warmth goes a long way. Draw that over the top because that's where the original design went. I'm going to try and recreate the same kind of shape that we had in the first swoosh. And I'm going to pinch very, very firmly again as I draw the wire all the way around, and we're going 1.5 times. So the nexus can get a little bit clustered where all the wires come together, but I kind of like that. So we're going to add that heat again, and we're coming from the top to underneath. Now you don't have to go exactly the same. If you decide that you think, actually I want to bring this over the top this time, you 100% can, and that is why it's called the Go Your Own Way design, because you can make it completely different every single time you use it. So I would probably get the half moon or horseshoe shape into position and have a look at what I think will look best. I actually quite like the fact that if I tilt that sideways there'll be gaps now. If you didn't like that, you could take the tail underneath. So again, it's entirely up to you what you do. Let's put that underneath so that it follows the original plan. Take the tail all the way around just above that wrapped loop at the base, which we can add a dropped bead onto later if we want. And I'm just going to manually push that round by hand, and then tighten up those coils at the base. And again, you would add coils on either end, wrapped loop at the top, and then you can use that in your bracelet design if you wish, or you can add on the extra bead at the base as we did before. So 100% customizable every single time. Cannot recommend the Tensha Beads highly enough. It is probably, let's have a look, see what it tells me. It doesn't give me the temper on the reel. I would say this is slightly softer, more artistic style. It's not exactly the same as artistic wire, but it's closer to artistic than it is to German style. So thank you very, very much. Let's get back up here for a moment and have a bit of a chat for 2 minutes. So I hope that you've enjoyed that, and as I said before, it is one of my absolute best sellers, and the reason for that is because you can make it completely different every time, and who doesn't want a one of a kind? You can go to a store and you can buy a dress that 50,000 people also have, or you can go to a designer and you can say, hey, I want something that's unique, and because it really doesn't take that long to make up, you can make something that's completely unique for somebody, but really hasn't taken you that long. And you can use these gorgeous Tensha beads, you can use whatever beads you fancy, as little or as much of the precious metal. You can use silver filled, you could go all the way and use sterling silver, or you can use the German style or the artistic. It will work with both artistic wire and German style wire. You may need to be a little bit more warmy with your fingertips if you are using a harder temper wire, but it does work for this design and they last forever. One of the things that you can do, let's drop you back down to the board for a second, pop you back down here. What you can do is take a finer gauge wire, and let's say you were to take 12 to 15 inches of a 26 or a 24 gauge wire, wind on 3 times just on this outer swoosh, And then you can start introducing teeny tiny beads from any of the bead collections that you might have available to you. Again, I don't have any on my desk, but you can just add a smattering of extra beads sitting on the outside wire. And then you've got something completely different yet again. So, completely different every single time. They are beautiful as earrings, but you kind of need to do it move by move if you're going to do earrings, because I genuinely do make them differently every time. Getting them to be the same is a bit of an issue for me. So if you're going to make them as earrings, and the Tensha beads are nice and light actually, you absolutely could use them for earrings. Let's have a look. Obviously these don't match. That's not a problem for some people, but you could use these as earrings just attached to your favourite style of ear wire. But what I would recommend is just going move by move. So make your right angle bend and a wrapped loop at the bottom, and then repeat with your second strand of wire so that you know you've got exactly the same length of wire at either end. And then all of your coils are going to be the same, which is something that I've demonstrated to you tonight. Even after, I don't know, 7 years of making jewellery with wire, I still don't get my coils the same length every single time, so hopefully you've enjoyed that, and do give me a shout. You can tag me here on this page today if you'd like to, and I will hopefully get the dragon out to you very, very soon. But I would like to thank you very much for your kindness and support and your generous comments, and for hanging out with me on Thursday afternoons. I almost said evenings. So in Cali it's coming up to 2 o'clock. Hopefully you've had a nice lunch time. On the East Coast you're coming up to 5 o'clock. So I guess you're thinking about dinner. I'm not obsessed with food, honestly. But I do want to say thank you for being with me. Much appreciated. And again, any questions, drop me a comment here, tag me, or I will check in tomorrow and see if there's anything that I can help you with. Hopefully that's covered the Go Your Own Way drop swirl pendant. I can't even remember what I called it now, which is classic me. I'm going to sign off for now, and I will catch up with you very, very soon. Thank you so much for all of your support, company and kind words, and I'll see you next week, hopefully. Bye!